Welcome to Stroke Forward. My name is Marcia Moran. For the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to talk about things that stroke survivors, or any brain injury survivor, deals with. If you look at me today, you probably don't see a person who had a stroke, but I feel it. My body functions differently. Do I think I will get back to 100%? Yes, because to think differently is to admit defeat. We will talk to all sorts of people who have been there, from survivors to caretakers to doctors, nurses, therapists, friends, and family who have seen us at our weakest. They have cheered us with their victories, no matter how large or how small. How did we get here? That's what this show is going to tell you. Alesha Goodwin is 37 years old and lives in Bend, Oregon, with her boyfriend Drew and their dog, Buddy. She was 34 on October 7th, 2019, when she had 2 freak strokes from spontaneous bilateral vertebral artery dissection. There was no cure or trauma to cause this to happen. She is now almost 2.5 years out from that insanely life-changing day, and is now the GM at an amazing local food cart lot and beer bar. She also started a younger stroke survivor support group that meets on Zoom monthly. I'm delighted to introduce Alesha Goodwin today. How are you doing, Alesha?
I'm doing well. A little tired and allergic to the air, but otherwise good.
Okay.
Allergy started early.
So you're allergic to the air. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've always had hay fever, but this year it seems to be really severe and really early. My eyes, you can't see that well on here, but my eyes are extremely red and raw around my eye and underneath and swollen, and they have been for about a week.
Oh.
And I've switched medications, with my doctor's advice, and I have all the stuff right here and and all the stuff trying to combat this, and it's just not really helping.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's made things difficult because people, I like to make eye contact with people when at work and things, and my eyes look really bad. I can't even put makeup on right now, but I put a little bit of concealer on for this.
Okay.
I'll probably regret it later.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh.
So tell us a little bit about your pre-stroke life.
I was 34 at the time, pretty healthy. I mean, like I've always carried a little bit of extra weight, but not anything that was unhealthy really. And that was the only, I guess pre-existing type condition that I thought I had ever had with anything, health-wise. And I was working at a jewelry company here locally in Bend, and I was basically like an administrative assistant and handled all the customer service stuff and fine jewelry orders and assembly, just like the stuff that they needed to trust someone with. And then I would take my dog for a walk every day, usually before work, work out 4 days a week at Orange Theory, and hike on the weekends. Like my most recent hike before the downfall was we hiked Broken Top for the second time, which is a pretty big mountain. And that was a huge accomplishment. And then right before everything, we were out hunting for 9 days on a hunting trip and hiked 52 miles on that trip too.
Wow.
Like rugged canyons. So that was another challenge.
Right.
And other than that, and my boyfriend, tomorrow is our 7-year anniversary. So we have been together through all of this, and yeah, that was my life before.
Well, congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you.
That's really special. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad he hung around through it all.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you look at whether your significant other stays or goes. I know that I was kind of shocked, and I shouldn't be, but I was shocked that my husband stayed.
Yeah.
And he's really been the light of my life.
Yeah, it's been hard, but I'm so lucky to have a supportive partner who cares.
Right, right. So how did your stroke happen?
So without the backstory of any of the details leading up to it, I was in my car in front of work and started having a stroke. And I had been in pain for 2 weeks or over like 15 days. And I had already been to see a chiropractor. I had been to see a doctor at the urgent care. I had been to the ER. I had had a couple deep tissue massages. And then after nothing helped, I finally just went on the planned hunting trip because I knew that my neck was out and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not just going to sit here and be in pain. I'm going to go try to push it out of my head and do this trip we've been planning. And the day after we got back, I had just left work and was in my car, and I felt like a head rush and just everything on my right side went numb. And, that's sparing a lot of details, but it was completely unexpected. I didn't know that base of skull pain was going to lead to a stroke. But as soon as it started, I knew that's what was happening because, everything went numb and I could feel it from the very top of my head all the way down to my toes. And then everything just went limp and I could feel my face pulling and, I could tell. And I don't know how I knew because I've never seen anybody have a stroke or, I knew a family member had, my aunt, but I wasn't there when it happened or anything. Like I didn't know much about it other than the fact that when you have a stroke, you have numbness and, versus a heart attack where you have chest pain.
Right, right. So you'd been to see some doctors and did they do anything?
Urgent care told me I must have strained it in a workout and I didn't.
Right.
I felt like sudden weakness, like the day after a workout. We got a new Amazon Fire Stick in our bedroom and I was like, oh, let's go lay down and watch a show or something. And my head felt really like heavy on my neck. Like I couldn't hold my head up. So I had to prop it up with a pillow and it just was weird. And then I was like, oh no, my neck is going out, which is something I had been dealing with once a month since a car accident in 2015. And I, just thought it was going out and it was going to be bad. So I saw my former landlord, who's a chiropractor. I saw him the next day. So 2 days after my workout, and had an adjustment. Pain never got better because the weakness started and then the pain started. And then the next day, I went to urgent care and that's when they told me, oh, you must have strained it during your workout. They gave me pain pills and muscle relaxers and sent me on my way. The pain kept getting worse.
And that's when you were taking pain medication?
Yeah, pain medication and muscle relaxers. It didn't touch it at all.
Right.
And actually, I think that was Sunday morning. That was Sunday morning because the chiropractor was Friday. And then Sunday afternoon, I had gotten my prescription. I had gotten it in my system. The pain was getting worse. So I had now the details are getting foggy, but I had my mom took me to the urgent care. My boyfriend took me to the ER. So he took me to the ER. They did a CT scan and they did, an x-ray or something and said, oh, they didn't see anything weird. So they sent me on my way and basically referred me to sports medicine. And conveniently, sports medicine called me for that referral 2 weeks later when I was in the hospital after having my 2 strokes. So, nothing they could have helped, but the pain was severe and continuous. And so after seeing that doctor, I was like, okay, they didn't do anything. They didn't tell me anything. They didn't tell me what it might be. They just said it's probably muscle strain. And I'm just like, this is severe. It was worse than it had ever been when my neck had gone out before, but it wasn't accompanied by a cervicogenic headache, which stems from the neck, like dysfunction in the neck or, problems with the neck. And I usually would get the neck pain and then get the headache. And the headache wasn't there. It was just the pain. And it was severe, base of my skull on this side. And that's where it always would go out. So I didn't think it was anything different than that.
Right.
I had a deep tissue massage twice that week and was just like feeling nauseous and ill, like from the pain. And the massages kind of helped a little bit, but everything was super tight. And she was just like, I don't know what's going on, but everything's really tight. So after all of that, there was no resolution, no pain relief at all. When we went hunting, I had a airplane pillow, and I, just sitting there around the campfire, I was like, had this on around my neck. And when we'd go drive out to a spot to go hunting, I would wear a cervical collar and just to hold my head up, because going over bumps was painful. I have a cervical neck pillow that I would sleep with, and I had like a gel ice pack, and I was taking a leave every day. Nothing touched it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah, it sounds truly awful.
And it was just continuous. So when something's that severe and continuous, something's wrong. But after all of the help I had tried to get, nobody gave me any reason why that would be happening. So I just figured it was out and pushing on a nerve or something.
Right. So that makes it a point. So if any of our listeners have a severe headache and they don't get the support they want, I would say go someplace else. But it is just too important to stick around and see if you have a stroke.
Right. And I could have, I got extremely lucky that it didn't happen, 60 miles away from civilization on top of a mountain, like in the woods, where there's no cell service.
Right.
Because if it had been a day prior, it would have been. And, people don't make it out of those situations usually because, cell phones don't work. You can't really get back to town easily.
Yep.
And it's funny because I had actually asked my boyfriend's family, like, have you guys ever heard like a helicopter, like search and rescue come up here because somebody fell or like something and got hurt? And they're like, no. And then that day, a helicopter, like a life, like a Airlink or something flew in the area. And I could tell that something had happened, but it was just kind of weird that I just asked that question and then that happened.
Yeah. So let's go back to you were having the stroke in your car, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about what happened that day.
So to make a long story short, I was really respected and good at my job, and I never really left to go anywhere. And so when I went on my trip, I was like, okay, told my boss, this is my email, you can go here, do this, all that stuff, showed her how to like take over for me while I was gone. That didn't seem to be a problem. We were completely away from cell service for 9 days, minus a short time in the middle where we came back to town, took showers, and got some groceries. And I remember I had a bunch of voicemails from the actual owner of the company, like, we can't get into your email. Did you change the password? I was like, no. And so I called her, and it was just strange because I had a really weird feeling. I was like, what is going on? And then they were just like, your password was changed. We had to hire a tech person to come get into your email. I'm like, I didn't change the password. I haven't been there. So my thought is somebody tried to get into it and got locked out.
Right.
But if they had just used my computer like I had, showed them, because it was all auto logged in, they could get in there just fine. So I don't know what happened, but I was just like, okay, weird. So I had a really weird feeling like the rest of the trip. And then I got back and went to work that next morning, and I was still in pain, that Sunday night, and exhausted, and went to bed kind of with a weird feeling about work. Because I had gotten another message like about something, and I was like, I don't know. I haven't had cell service. I haven't had the ability to change anything. I don't know what you're asking, but I'll see you in the morning. And I went in, and long story short, lost my job. So I was upset, but I had been in pain for 2 weeks, 15 days. I had been in pretty severe pain. And I was just like, actually, you know what? It was like 17 days, because it was the Thursday that it started. And this was on a Monday. This was October 7th of 19. So I basically talked to my boss, gave her a hug, whatever, the owner. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I didn't really know what happened. So I had lost my job, and I was pretty devastated, but everyone had kind of reassured me that this is a stepping stone. There's better things in the future for you. You're awesome. And, hugged everybody goodbye, like went around the place and said goodbye to everybody and went out to my car. And Drew had texted me, do you still have a job? I said, no. I said, I'll deal with unemployment tomorrow. I'm going to go home and lay down. So I was in my car, pulled up to the stop sign and heard my dad, who had passed away in 2012, a block away from where I was sitting. I heard him tell me to back up now. And I listened because he had never talked to me like that before. I had heard his voice in my head a few times, like back at the beginning, but nothing like that. So I backed up and stopped. And basically, that's when I started to go numb from the top of my head all the way down my side to the tip of my toes on my right side. And I knew I was having an emergency. I knew that something was really wrong. And first instinct was just to get help because I was by myself out there. Mm-hmm. And so I had just gotten the phone number of one of my coworkers, and I tried calling my boss first and she didn't answer. And so I was using my left hand at the time because my right hand, I couldn't move at all. Mm-hmm. And I used the number that I had just put in my phone, and I called Jen, and she came running out. She was like, "What's wrong?" And I was just slurring, and she came running out and called 911. And I was completely numb on that side. I could feel my mouth drooping and my face pulling, and my right eye was stuck, like fixed to the left. And so I kept trying to close one eye, and it was really hard to keep one eye closed. So I closed both of them. Mm-hmm. And when she was talking to the dispatcher, they were worried about, me passing out or something. So they were like, "Don't let her close her eyes." And I was trying to tell her, through slurred speech that I had to close my eyes. And she's like, "They want to know if you're having a seizure." I was like, no. Like, she's like, "She's young, she's healthy, she works out all the time. I don't know what's going on." I don't feel like they routed the call properly. I later found out that they didn't, but it felt like it took forever for the paramedics to get there. An ambulance and fire truck came, and then one of them left, and I can't remember which one because my eyes were closed and I was focused on the paramedics. But basically they got there and hooked me up to all these electrodes from my ankles up to my chest, and then basically asked me if I could move, and I said no. And they're like, "Well, your vitals are fine." And I'm, still completely gone on the right side. Right. Every single symptom of a stroke that you can think of, I was exhibiting. Yeah. And they asked me if I could get up, and I was getting really frustrated because I kept telling them, I think I'm having a stroke, or I said, I'm having a stroke. And they're like, "Well, you might be having a panic attack. Have you ever had a panic attack before?" And I hit my hand, or I hit my leg with my left hand. Like, I was just getting frustrated. And I kept going, like, "Listen to me. This is not a panic attack." And they're like, "Well, what happened in a panic attack when you had one in college?" And I told them, I got like lightheaded and had shortness of breath and just felt overwhelmed. And, that was not that. That was not what was happening. Right. So I was really frustrated. And then they asked me, "Can you get up?" And I said, no. And they're like, "No." I mean, I was facing forward in my driver's seat. So I used my left arm and grabbed the pillar of my car and spun my body around. So my feet were out of the car, and they asked me to stand up. And I said, I can't. And, I'm still like, it's hard to mimic exactly how I was because I was slurring so bad, but I could hear myself. And, I told them I can't. And they're like, "You can't?" And I was like, oh gosh, apparently this is just going to be the way it goes. So I grabbed the pillar and pulled myself up with my left arm, and I was like leaning against my car, and I stood up, and they're like, "Oh, well, that explains that. You're dehydrated."
What do you mean by dehydrated?
And I was like, "Well, my breakfast protein shake is right here, and I haven't drank a lot of water, and I just got back from a hunting trip." But, I'm probably not making a lot of sense. I know what
Right.
I'm saying and I'm trying to speak slow, but it's not a panic attack and it's not dehydration and something is clearly wrong.
Right.
And I'm just, I'm good about explaining how I'm feeling, or, good about understanding what's wrong with me when something's wrong. And I feel like that gets dismissed a lot, but this was kind of a big deal. And I was like, something's wrong and you're telling me nothing's wrong. And so they're like, well, we just found out you lost your job. And so that's pretty stressful. Are you sure you're not having a panic attack because of that? And I'm like, I'm really fine. It's not that. I was like, I've been in pain for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks, severe pain. And, I kept telling them, I think I'm having a stroke. And so then they're like, oh, they asked my boss, they're like, oh, can somebody take her home? Maybe she just needs to go rest. And I'm
That's
just
unbelievable.
I'm kind of baffled.
Yeah.
At this point in time. And, I sit back down and I'm just kind of laying there, and they've already tried calling my mom and calling my boyfriend, telling them something's wrong. It's like 11 something. So like almost lunchtime, and Drew's busy at work. He was a mechanic at the time. He was for 18 years until recently. He got out of that. But he ended up being the one that came and took me to the hospital because they told him to come, because I was adamant about going to the hospital. They basically told me that they didn't want to take me to the hospital because I'd end up with a huge ambulance bill. And they didn't think it was urgent. So if I had gone home like they had told me to, because Drew even asked me, do you want to go home or do you want to go to the hospital? Because at that point in time, when he made it there, I was kind of lucid again. I came out of it. And then in his truck, I believe, is when the second stroke happened on the way to the hospital. But, I don't know exactly, because I found out later that, low blood flow after that sort of thing, after a dissection, you can have like waxing and waning, and you can have like going in and out. But when he got there, I was worried about my car. I was like making sure my car gets moved, but I had to stand up again, leaning on my car, and the paramedics, one had my arm over their shoulder and the other one was like holding my arm by my shoulder, and they dragged me to his truck and then hoisted me up into it. And my whole entire right leg was dragging on the ground, and all of my coworkers were watching out the big window. And later on, after I got out of the hospital, there was dirt all over the top of my shoe when I got my belongings back. And I was like, why is that? And Drew's like, well, I was going to wash the truck today after getting back from hunting, but plans changed when you ended up in the hospital, or, not today, but that day.
Yeah.
And so there was dirt all over the top of my shoe. And I realized it's because when they dragged me and kind of hoisted me up into the truck, my leg dragged up the step, like all the way up, which was covered in mud. So that's why my pant leg and my shoe were covered in mud.
Yeah.
But, because I remembered all of it.
I am so sorry for how badly they treated you, because you clearly were having a stroke.
Yeah.
And for them to ignore the signs and give you to someone else to take you to the hospital, I don't even understand how you can get through that.
I don't know. I mean, I started briefly reading your story and I saw that, you were by yourself and then had to basically struggle to get help too. And it's just scary. It's so scary. And it's scary. Like, it's really emotional. Like I believe I have PTSD from that situation. I get really emotional about it because I know there's other people out there that this happens to all the time, and they're young and healthy, or they're not, but still, like, people get dismissed.
Right.
Especially when you appear young and healthy. They don't think that could possibly be happening to you. And that's so scary, because how many people have died because they went home, or because somebody didn't take it seriously?
Yeah. So I'm going to suggest you look at microcurrent neurofeedback. And the interesting thing about microcurrent neurofeedback, and I'll give you the URL to it later when we're off the phone, but it treats PTSD.
Okay.